I'm Gail. I like donuts and fried chicken and coffee. Who are you people? Who are you crazy people? I have so many questions for you. Obviously, we're here to celebrate this beautiful book and the people who made not just this book happen, but the donut and fried chicken empire that they created together. I've never known a book with so many names on its cover. And I can only imagine that that was an extraordinary and exciting process. So I can't wait to hear about it. There will be time after for questions, so save your questions, but I do encourage throwing eggs, as long as they don't hit me, and making odd, distracting noises. No opening hard candies, though. That's the one thing you're not allowed to do. Okay. Federal Donuts. I would love if we could talk a little bit about each of your roles. We'll get to the book in a minute, but just to set us up for the Philadelphia institution that is Federal Donuts. Felicia, let's start with you. How did you get to have to work with these hooligans?
I started my career as a writer at the city paper, writing about food, and I got to cover Zahav when it first opened, 9 years ago now? So I met Mike and Steve through Zahav, and was having dinner with Mike one night, and he was like, we've been hanging out with Bobby and Tommy, and they have this weird idea, and we found a space that's pretty cool, and we got this weird idea. And I went to Bodhi the next day, and I saw Bobby when I was buying a coffee, and I was like, hey, I want in. I want in.
She didn't even know what the idea was.
I didn't even know what it was. I had no
Whatever
idea.
it is, it doesn't even matter. So you left your job.
Yeah, I had left my job. I worked for Yelp, the hated Yelp, and I quit. And
Now what do you think of Yelp?
It's a very interesting company.
Being on the other side must be interesting.
Yeah, but just started from there.
And what is your role specifically in the puzzle?
I used to do all the social media, and now some of our amazing employees do it, and they've taken over the kind of fun voice. It's really amazing.
Awesome. Mike, you look familiar. I can't really figure out how I know you. So I'd love if you tell us a little bit about, obviously, the background of how you got to be in the picture, but about this crazy idea.
Okay, so Steve and I had opened, I think at that point we had 3 restaurants. One was called Sochit, one was called Zahav, and one was called Percy Street Barbecue. And none of them made any money.
Perfect time for a new big idea.
I know, and we were getting really antsy and I guess maybe a little bit bored. But at that time also, Bobby and Tommy had opened a coffee shop called Bodhi, and they were the first people to bring stumped. I'm like taking your story away from you. I'm out of shit to say, so I'm just going to talk about their life. But so we would have coffee there because they brought like amazing coffee and amazing coffee culture to Philadelphia, and Bobby and I, tend to get really caffeinated and talk totally out of our asses. And we were talking about how Penn Sport is this amazing sort of untapped place in South Philadelphia, and I think you guys were talking about donuts, but at that time Steve and I were eating Korean fried chicken in Cheltenham, like a lot of it.
Constantly, all the time?
All the time. My stomach still in repair from eating that much Korean fried chicken. And they're open. There's a place that's called Soho Cafe in Cheltenham. It's open very, very late. So you can leave and after work drive like 35 minutes through North Philly to get there. And it's the best chicken wings ever.
I've taken that trip at 11:30 on a Friday night, and it's delicious. If you ever get a chance to, you should do it.
It's really good. A little Pepto-Bismol in the glove compartment, you're fine.
Spicy?
Super spicy and really, really good. So we were eating a lot of that. I think they were talking about donuts. You guys want to finish this?
We were talking about donuts. Tommy had just come back from San Fran, and we had started Bodhi Coffee, and like all of us in the restaurant business, we weren't making any money. And we were just trying to decide what it was that we could do to maybe energize something that we had going on already. And there was this dive pizza parlor on my corner at Second, just below Federal. And the neighbors hated the joint. The guys used to leave a 55-gallon drum of grease outside. It was just sort of like the bane of the existence of several square blocks. And then finally I happened to see a real estate shingle hanging out there. The place had been closed for a while. I couldn't figure out how to get in the door, and I tried. And finally, there was a real estate shingle of a friend of mine hanging on the side of the building. And bing, bang, boom, I called him. And the day I was going down to take a peek, Mike and I were standing out front of Bodhi and Sochi picking up trash, like restaurant owners do. And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm going to drive down a few blocks and take a look at this dive." He's like, "I'll go with you." And that kind of was kind of a magic moment right there.
So all very glamorous. That's what we all have so far. Take notes. Number 1, glamorous restaurant industry. Okay, Tom, how do you fit in this crazy picture?
I guess there's not much left for Steve and I.
We'll start with you guys next time, I promise.
So yes, I had just come back from San Francisco and was talking with Bobby, and we were talking about doing donuts. We know about coffee, but I know about eating donuts, but we definitely knew nothing about making donuts. So Bobby was like, "Hey man, I was talking to Mike, brought up with him, and he and Steve might be on board." And I'm like, "Wow, that'd be incredible." We just went from something that we could do to now where we have established, rich at the time we thought, restaurateurs that are gonna go into business with us, and this is it, man. Like this is it. But no, Mike was fresh off his Beard Award, for Mid-Atlantic, so it was such a weird time to kind of be doing that as well. That was kind of a, because Mike had just come out of that, and then people were like, "You're gonna do what? Like donuts and fried chicken? Like what do you mean?" Like, and then people were like making fun of Mike, like all of a sudden his Beard Award was not as important anymore, and he's ruining his brand and all that stuff, that all the lovely people on the internet say sometimes.
Well, maybe that's the key, actually, that people don't know about winning a James Beard Award. It allows you to do whatever the F you want next.
Yeah, we were super rich at the time, too.
Yeah,
so
obviously. That's a recurring theme. Yeah, just money falling all over you. Steve, that was where you came in. You're the money man.
The Beard Award is like a license to print money. I got roped into it by Mike and Bobby, and I was like, no way.
But you were already working with Mike.
Yeah, Mike and I were already working together. I was already used to his crazy ideas, and I was like, it was like a poker game. I'm like, these guys are bluffing. I'll stay in, just one round longer. And then that's kind of how most restaurants happen. You have a crazy idea, and you talk about it long enough, and you get kind of halfway there and halfway there and halfway there, and before you know it, it's time to sign the lease. And you wake up and you're like, this is a crazy idea.
So number 2 in your notes is major business plan. Very strategic business plans are needed to open really successful donut shops. And that leads me perfectly to my next question. And you talk about this a lot in the book and address it actually, I think, in this way. And it wasn't the answer that I thought it would be. Why donuts? There's a lot of things that we love to eat. But I guess this is a 2-part question. Why donuts for you? But what is it about the donut in general? The philosophical idea of the donut that makes it so special, that appealed to all of you the most? Tom? Yeah, I'm right at you.
People ask why donuts, and the first thing that we thought of when we came back, and the cupcakes were kind of on the edge of their craze, and donuts have been kind of a constant. They've always been around. There's nothing like biting into a warm, hot, fresh donut that has just come out and is still steaming hot and has sugar on there, at least for me personally. And that's something that we've all alluded to in the book and in conversations amongst ourselves about how that kind of invokes memories of childhood, of being on the boardwalk. I know for you, and you've talked about that as well. So we wanted something that could be more, present today and tomorrow as well, and maybe not succumb to some of the food trends.
Mm-hmm. And you specifically decided, before we get to the chicken, you specifically decided to make a cake donut as opposed to a yeast donut. Do you want to tell everyone the difference in case they don't know, and then why you decided only cake donuts all day?
I think I actually wanted yeast donuts, but I think Steve wanted only cake donuts. Why?
Well,
So it's Steve's fault?
just to disagree with you. I mean, cake donuts is like exactly what it sounds like. It's essentially cake batter, although that doesn't work. And yeast donuts is like an enriched dough with yeast that you let rise. You roll them out, you cut them, and you fry them. Whereas the batter, cake donuts is a batter that you kind of dispense. You can roll them, as we talk about in the book, but I don't know. I grew up every Sunday as a bribe to get us to go to Sunday school. We got Dunkin' Donuts, which is like the original, one of the original cake donut places. And in fact, this was before Krispy Kreme's like recent resurgence. It was around in Miami. And I thought that we never went, we always went to Dunkin' Donuts, and I thought we never went to Krispy Kreme because it was like 2 Ks, and I thought like they were racist or something. But
Dark.
yeah, I don't think
Timely, but dark.
I don't think that's true.
We brought that up in the book to allude to our
Yeah.
growing rise in popularity.
But I think cake donuts are just a little bit, they're just a little bit easier. They're less temperamental when you're dealing with yeast. Time, is a huge factor, and there's a lot more margin for error in terms of, and we wanted a consistent product. So that's
Because you didn't have a recipe.
Because we had no idea what we were doing. It just seemed easier.
Right. So tell me a little bit about the recipe. You decided so here we are, we have a space. Space is also an issue when making yeast donuts, right? You need a lot more space for the proofing and the rising.
Space was an issue just for cake donuts because we would have had to have a proofing box.
Right. No room for a proofing box. So you've decided to make cake donuts. You have a space. You might have had a name at that point. Did you have a name at that point?
I think we had a name just because it was on the street. I think we went one round of names and one round of logos, and that was it.
Stuck? Worked?
So far.
So you have a name and you have a space, and you want cake donuts, but you don't know how to make cake donuts.
No, not a goddamn thing
Arguably
about
an
it.
issue. Right.
This is where
What happened
this
next?
is the part of the process where we're like, all right, guys, so
Yeah,
where are
Bobby and Tommy and Felicia disappeared for 3 months. Steve and I, in the basement of Percy Street barbecue with no hood or ventilation whatsoever, got a donut robot.
Tell everyone what a donut robot is, because there's a chapter dedicated to the donut robot. I feel badly for this donut robot. I feel like he gets neglected a little bit, doesn't get the credit. He or she, excuse me, I don't want to skew with one gender or the other, but I definitely feel like the robot needs a little more love. Tell us a little bit about the donut robot and where you got the donut robot.
It's going to be taking over the world, so you shouldn't feel so bad about it. I don't know. We drove in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, we found a used one. I mean, all the equipment for this restaurant was used. We found a used one outside of Harrisburg that Bobby found from a guy who
On eBay.
Yeah.
Or was it Craigslist?
I don't think it was on eBay because we got all this cash out and we thought we might get taken for it. Right. eBay, I think, has buyer protection.
Yeah, we were leery of that.
It's important when you buy a donut robot, you put all the money in your underwear when you meet strangers in a parking lot. Rule 3.
I was going to say, Rule 3. So, Bobby, how did you find this donut robot, and what does a donut robot do?
All right, so Donut Robot is a beautiful piece of like World War I / early 20s piece of equipment that, it kind of creaks and it pivots. It's something that you would totally see in some ancient sci-fi movie, but it's just a beautiful piece of equipment. And we got the original model, didn't we? Didn't we get the DR42?
DR42 was one of the early ones.
So I mean, like
They don't make it like that anymore.
and I remember like cannibalizing parts off of other ones because Steve had a most brilliant move of our entire inception, and that was let's get 2 because it's gonna break, right?
And because you have so much money just flying around.
Well, I mean,
Steve graduated college.
I think the going, and it broke like real fast. Right?
I think 2 times even.
And none of us really knew what we were doing. We would take it apart and put it back together, but we figured it out eventually. And so I mean, it was literally like it was a Google search. It was like we knew that we wanted this. There were the new ones, but they weren't in our budget. And then there were ones that you could find online. And
Wasn't it a church basement?
it was, and it was a guy. He claimed that it only was used on Sunday afternoons at church, and we sort of believed him, and we drove out there and picked the darn thing up. I remember the back road ride home. Why did we miss the turnpike on the ride home? I forget.
Bobby, you took us the wrong direction.
Right?
It took us 6 hours to
we
get
went
back
into
there.
Lancaster to try that other donut shop.
Yes.
Oh.
So we went into, and then we just meandered our way all the way to Westchester on back roads, and then it was hours. But that was where hot, fresh donuts were invented. The idea of hot, fresh donuts.
Of frying to order.
Yes, and tossing in sugars. That conversation was had in that car ride home.
So you did
The
know
idea
that
of
that's what you
stealing that
wanted
from
to
other
do.
people and doing it ourselves.
You do two kinds of donuts. I mean, you do only cake donuts, but two finishes of your donuts at Federal Donuts. How did you decide that some would be hot, fresh, and some would be what you call fancies?
I have no idea. The first iteration we would take donuts, make them, punch a bunch of holes into them, pipe different creams into them, and then dip them. So we had the fancy, but then the real pain in the ass, dry, don't taste good fancies that we served for the first couple of months. So I don't know why. I think we did that because we wanted a couple glazes and we wanted some things that were a little bit more dynamic and layered and that would also travel really well. When you dip a donut into a sugar glaze, you're sort of preserving it and it gives it a little bit more of, you have a few more hours of tenderness to it.
That's great because I have 8 of them sitting backstage that I just picked up on the way here, and I need to get back to Brooklyn tonight, so they're going to be fine.
Though on the Jersey Turnpike, amazing. They taste
Perfect.
even better.
They might not all make it back, but I'm glad that they will hold up. So now you have your donuts. You have figured out a recipe somehow. I mean, I'm still kind of confused about how that happened, but there is a master recipe, and now you decide on chicken, fried chicken. Where did the chicken piece come? Because they're not traditionally paired together. Some might say. Felicia.
Mike and Steve had been eating, at Cafe Soho a lot, more than anybody should. And it's a very long drive up Fifth Street. It really takes a while. And so I think a part of it was, this is pretty dope, and maybe we could kind of steal it and bring it to closer to Center City or to more people who might be not know about it. Because we never had banchan in Philly till a few years ago, so Philadelphia didn't really have Korean fried chicken that people were familiar with. And I mean, if we're gonna do donuts in the morning, what are you gonna do kind of after the donut hours? And fried chicken was that thing, and we seem to think that they had something in common, but they definitely don't. And
They're fried.
Yeah, and if we knew,
So one fryer.
No.
Well, I thought
That would be-
originally I was we'll just get a fryer.
Yeah.
And that'll be it.
All in the same oil.
And then I'm oh my God, these donuts taste terrible. The chicken, however, if you do it the other way, it tastes very
Delicious. Sweet and sugary chicken. But you do many kinds of chicken. I mean, you do fried chicken, but you do different flavor chickens. How did some of those flavors come to be, and why did you decide to go that route? Because it's not traditional fried chicken, and it's definitely not just Korean chicken, although you make Korean chicken, Korean fried chicken.
I remember we did the donut test in the basement of Percy Street with no ventilation, but the chicken test, which came later, we did with ventilation at Zahav, and we were only going to do the traditional Korean-style glazes, painted on, the wet glazes. And I remember Mike and I were there one morning, and we pulled some chicken out of the fryer basket, and there was za'atar just laying around. Zahav's just got piles of za'atar on every surface, and we just, I don't know, we threw some in a bowl with some za'atar, and that was how that flavor was born. And then once we had this sort of dry seasoning, we started to think about it in terms of 2 categories, and we started to fill out those menu items from there.
And then you opened. First location.
Yeah.
Small space, 1.5 donut robots, depending on the parts. And people came. That surprised you.
Very surprised.
I wasn't surprised, for the record. I was not surprised.
I remember you. I blocked this out. I blocked this out until this moment, but I remember you the day before being like, you guys have to have more than 15 orders of chicken. And I was like, I don't know, Steve. Felicia seems to think that we're going to sell more than 15. And you're like, just order 15. And then, we ran out of donuts. We opened at 7, and then we got somebody come in and ordered like 3 dozen, and we're like, we're out of donuts. And the batter was not correct. I remember we would lose like every other donut. So if somebody came in for hot fresh, and we had a 4th flavor of hot fresh, so it screwed up the way people would order. They couldn't just order a half dozen or a full dozen. And it was like chili, lime, garlic or something, like not what you'd want to have at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we sold out of donuts at 9, I think. And then when we were getting ready, we had no chicken prepped whatsoever. We just had it like cured, and we were double frying it. And by the time we opened for chicken service, there was a line that had 3 times as many people as we had chicken. And we were like, And Felicia was probably like, I told you so. Yeah. But since we all wanted to like totally quit our jobs at that moment, she didn't say anything. So it was a really dark sort of afternoon.
Bob, what did you do with all the people and no chicken?
I remember I lived on the block, so first off, the neighbors weren't all that happy with me, and then but the line was wrapping around the corner, and I just started going down the line and just saying, how many orders do you want? And you, and literally, I got about 8, 9 people down the line, and that was it. Our chicken was gone, and there was like another 50, 60 people, and I came back in, and I grabbed everybody behind the counter, and I said, we're screwed, and we're out, and what are we going to do? And somebody just had the brilliant idea of let's just give it all away. Which we did, and if you count it up, what we have, like maybe 20 chickens that day, or less, 15, and so so we had about 60 pieces, and that was it. We got to the end of the line. Everybody got a piece of chicken, and everybody was so happy. I mean, it was like we walked outside and announced that we don't have chicken for anybody, but everybody's getting a free piece of chicken, and it was just it was like a football roar. It was
it's like the Oprah effect.
It was really cool. It was really cool. Yeah.
So what happened on day 2? Did you change? Did you?
Same exact thing.
Perfect. Okay.
It's like, except 15 minutes later.
You ordered 1 more chicken.
Yeah, day 2 was also really, really rough. And I remember at that we were all working more than full time in this tiny shop that had, I think like the season had changed between day 1 and day 2, and I was like, man, these floors are really cold at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was just, I don't know, but we knew we were onto something at that moment because there was just an energy and there was an excitement, and we had done such poor planning for this whole thing, but we were onto something, and it was something that was organic and something based on the 5 of us coming together and essentially putting in a pot what we weren't that concerned about, losing. I mean, it was just really sort of easy and simple, and here we are, years later, still wondering how to make.
Still running out of chicken.
How to make enough, right?
Yeah. So, in the audience, just for my own curiosity, show of hands, who's been to Federal Donuts before? Oh, I would say 98% of you. Just quick glance, and of that percentage, how many have you? Let me say that again. How many of you have been there, and they haven't had? They've run out of chicken or run out of the donut. You can be honest, it's okay. We won't come after you. Okay. So Steve, this is something that comes up in the book a lot that I actually think is really interesting, and if you've been in that position as a customer, I think is really interesting to hear about from a restaurant standpoint. This idea that most people thought it was intentional, and that you ran out of chicken or the donuts that they wanted that day, the flavor of donut, on purpose to be an ass, to be cool, to create this buzz and, I guess we would call it like hashtag FOMO situation with Federal Donuts. But that isn't really the case. what were the constraints on making enough chicken and donuts,
Well,
especially in the early days?
I wish we were that smart to do that on purpose. I mean, our bank account at the time we opened was like 2 digits. So it was like we just didn't want to lose more money. So we were pretty conservative in how much we ordered. And I think the other big thing that we took a lot of heat for was we had one refrigerator, and the chicken was like a 2-day process. So at any given point in time, we would have 2 days worth of chicken in that one refrigerator. And we literally just couldn't store or order more. So we were just we were playing catch up from day one, and it just took us a long time to catch up. And finally we were able to move some of the process off site, and we were able to supply enough chicken. But I mean, we also wanted to make sure that the chicken that we were serving was really good, because if that's kind of the whole point of having a restaurant that only serves 2 things, is like living up to is making sure that both of those things are good.
A lot of bad chicken is definitely worse than a little really good chicken.
Well, there's always coffee. But that was not intentional. And then to sort of pour gas on the flames, the first store we opened was 600 square feet with one refrigerator, and then we opened a second store that was also 600 square feet with one refrigerator.
In Center City.
Yeah.
So you're all learning as you go, not necessarily applying the lessons, but learning them, until someone, maybe Bob, I can't remember, you tell me, had the idea to build a commissary. And that led to an entirely new business plan. And is that the off-site production you were talking about? So how did that happen? And did the chicken process get easier?
Well, we had been processing, some of our stuff and making some of our glazes in the basement of Percy Street. And we had done that even after we had opened Center City. So we now had 2 stores open, up and running, that are being supported by Percy Street, which at the time was an open, running restaurant. And Chef Erin O'Shea was wonderful to us. She was great. And it just got to the point where Chef Erin O'Shea wanted to kill us all the time. She wanted her kitchen back, and we were like, we can't do this. We need to come up with our own plan. And that's when we started looking at, all right, well, we have Center City and we have South Philly. Let's maybe look at something in West Philly and something, in North Philly. So that's ultimately what led to those 2 locations.
And then you centralized some of the production.
Correct. And then one of those 2 locations are at 7th and Fairmount, is where we handle all of our production there.
Still, right now.
Correct, today.
And so centralizing production allowed you to buy more chicken, to make more chicken, and you were left with an unintended byproduct, which is where the story gets really, really nice. What was it, and what'd you do with it?
The byproduct is chicken bones. And we had like 500 or 1,000 pounds of chicken bones a week that we were throwing out, depending on the time of year, which was like, we never really thought about that before. We were just excited to be able to buy as many chickens as we needed for the first time. So I remember being in the car. We were actually going out to meet someone that you introduced us to, someone in the venture capital world, to just try to give us some guidance about what we should be thinking. And so it was like one of the first times the 5 of us had been together in a little while, and we just started talking about this like chicken back problem, and that's kind of, I think, where the Rooster Soup idea was born. So in January, we opened a restaurant in Center City, about a block away from our Center City store, that's called the Rooster Soup Company, which uses those chicken bones. So we make broth from those chicken bones now. We turn that broth into soup, and that soup anchors the menu at this little diner at 15th and Sansom, and then 100% of the profits of that restaurant go to support the mission of our partner, Broad Street Hospitality Collaborative, and their mission is to, thanks. It's an amazing, really amazing organization, and they, among other things, they serve over 70,000 meals a year to, fellow Philadelphians who need it, and they provide vital social services on top of that. So that's where all that chicken bones led us.
And how did you and Broad Street come together? How was that relationship created?
Steve,
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those. I mean, a guy that I knew in the restaurant business was like, "Hey, I'm on this advisory board for this organization. They're looking for people in the restaurant business to give them advice because they're in this new segment of the hospitality business, which is like free, and they really wanted to treat their guests to the same experience that we would treat our guests to. So they were out there soliciting people from the industry to come and advise them on best practices. And my friend asked me. I didn't have too much going on at the time. You know, I think 9 times out of 10 I'd probably say no to that offer, but something about it, I said yes. And I went to one of their busiest lunches on Thursdays. They can serve up to 400 people, and I went into the building. And if anybody's ever been in that building before when they're serving people, you can't step foot in there and not be moved by not only what they do, but the way that they do it. And so from that point on, it was, at least in my mind, and everybody, you know, quickly kind of rallied around it, but you know, we were gonna somehow figure out a way to get involved there.
You know, we all laugh a little bit because he said the words hospitality business, and you all sort of laughed because he was saying that they do it for free. But this, I think, is the crux of the beauty of this relationship that you've built, which I think is pretty revolutionary. I had the privilege of eating at Rooster Soup Company when you first opened. At the beginning of the year, and I've never seen anything like it. It's an extraordinary relationship, and one of those ideas I think that I can't believe hasn't been done before. So talk about world domination. I'm all for it. Don't bring the robot. But 2 questions hearing the story that come to mind. One is, how did you get Erin O'Shea, who hated you guys at this point, to be the chef at Rooster Soup Company, right? Because she leads the charge over there. So she recovered from the Percy Street incident.
Yeah, we just made the robot convince her.
Okay. And I guess, tell me, Mike, a little bit about the idea of hospitality and how what you do with Broad Street has really changed that paradigm.
Well, I think that we, as a group and as a team, care about the way that we, you know, our relationship to our customer and our fellow Philadelphian. The problem is that you go from one of our restaurants to the other and you see people that need help, people that are in need on the street, and people that maybe don't have a home, or people that could use an extra meal to get through the week, you know, and we just wanted to be part of that, and we want to support people, and it gets a little bit, we all love what we do. We love the restaurant industry, we love making cool food, having a great vibe, you know, but there was a slice of Philadelphia that we were serving. And I think that, I'll speak for all of us, it feels incredible to include everybody into that. And not only that, if you come to Federal Donuts and you buy chicken, you are supporting people that need help. If you come to Rooster Soup and I'm not just trying to get you into our restaurants, but you know, you should. If you come into Rooster Soup and order a bowl of soup, you're paying for somebody to eat that can't afford it. And you know, how incredibly spiritual is that to be part of that? And I think it's the fact that it happened also organically. It happened from one visit. You know, we're always asked to do things, to get involved, and restaurants are always used to sort of help market. And I think it's hilarious that Steve managed to like always avoid that. And he went to one meeting one time, and I'm like, we have a nonprofit restaurant. But how cool is that that's happened here in our city? You know, Federal Donuts happened because Bobby lives on Federal, right? Or on Second, right? And we ran into each other, and we had like failing businesses, and we all sort of got together. And then here we go with starting this sort of food trend, and then more importantly, Rooster Soup being created here in Philadelphia. I couldn't be more proud. And they also, thank you. And for part of we raised a lot of money with Kickstarter, and part of my contribution to that was wearing a chicken suit and jumping out of an airplane for $10,000, which you can still do if you guys want. If you contribute $10,000 to Rooster Soup, we put on chicken suits and jump out of airplanes.
Generous of you.
We have a sign-up sheet outside.
Will there be more Rooster Soup companies? Do you think?
I hope so.
Will there be more Federal Donuts?
Definitely.
I hope better be.
Well, for those of us that don't get to Philadelphia or Miami, because there's a location now in Miami, there's the book with all these incredible stories and also master recipes. One thing I love that you say in the book about your recipes that I think most people in the restaurant industry feel, but it's not explained enough, is that these are the real recipes. We don't need to trick you or leave something out. This is it. If you want to go and copy and open a donut shop, good luck to you. As you can see, it's very organic and easy. But I love that there's just that authenticity of like, it really reads like, you know, a heartfelt endeavor and something that clearly you all have put yourselves into, and it's paid off in incredible ways that you could have never imagined. Thank you. We're going to take questions. Before we take questions, I have one quick question for each of you. Favorite flavor? Steve? In?
The cinnamon brown sugar hot fresh.
Classic.
That's the best.
Tom?
Strawberry lavender hot fresh.
Bob?
And you're wrong if you think I'll know.
Indian cinnamon hot fresh.
Oh. Michael?
Apollonia, which is off the menu, but you can order
Not
it.
anymore.
I know. Yeah, Apollonia spice is the best. It's cocoa, orange blossom, and black pepper. Don't tell anybody.
Felicia?
I always get a plain hot fresh donut, no sugar. So good.
Yeah. It is amazing. Thank you, guys.
Know how much money you have to put in your underwear to buy the donut robot, please?
It depends on the parking lot.
So, how much did the donut
I don't know how much it costs.
$17. No.
That one was 2,000.
2,000?
Yeah.
Or
It
20
fits.
quarts.
I mean, we could fit that.
20 quarts of your blood. That's all.
My question is not just on Federal Donuts, but on all your restaurants. It is claimed that the restaurant business cannot exist without undocumented. Would you like to comment on that?
Wow, that's a fun question.
We have a wonderful staff that we support and we show a lot of love for every day. They come from every walk and every land, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
It's such a different structure. How did Kickstarter get involved, and how did you handle that as it being just such a different method? And I think it really generated a closeness with the community. And who has their tattoo?
So the tattoo is owned by Chef Steven Seibel, who's the executive chef at Broad Street Hospitality Collaborative. He said he would get it when we reached a certain goal. We were trying to push all the way up to 200,000 or something like that. And once we crossed the threshold, he went and got it that day, which was amazing. But the Kickstarter idea was something that we kind of kicked around as a group because we knew we couldn't go for a sort of normal funding model for a restaurant, which is where you gather some investors or people who are interested or take out a loan or something like that, because we knew we wouldn't be able to pay those people back with a goal of donating all the profits to Broad Street Ministry. So basically, Steve was like, if we can get the community invested in this and we can get a lot of people to invest, what they feel moved to give, it'll be a proof of concept and we'll know that at least a big chunk of Philadelphia is kind of behind it. And we thought if we did not make our goal, because Kickstarter is an all or nothing platform, you can't take what you raise if you don't make your goal, that we would be well informed that it wasn't going to work if we couldn't make our goal. And it was a very interesting way to raise money. It's very difficult and rewarding.
How do you choose flavors, and how long do they stay on the menu for? And how can we get back some really good old ones?
Where's Dan? Where's? Oh.
Well, we will. Our chef Matt Fine is in the audience.
Where's Matt? He was here before. There we go. Hi, Matt. everyone just yell at him.
Right.
Yeah,
His
we have
email
his address and social security number, so just send your request to him.
His cell phone number's in the book. No, I mean, I don't know, we try to not have too many hard and fast rules for anything at Federal. You know, Matt gets inspired and we have, you know, we do a donut tasting, which is actually really hard work, even though it doesn't sound like it.
And we do bring back some of the greatest hits every now and then for the person who asked that question. So if you might be able to get what you're looking for someday, all right?
Campaign.
Okay, hi, how are you? Good. Do you have anything that's vegetarian?
Sorry, repeat the question again.
I'm a vegetarian, what you got?
We got a lot of donuts for you. Coffee. We have vegetarian coffee as well.
Hi, can you speak about your collaboration with the music group Fish that you undertook this summer? I know that I think one or more of you is a fan, so I was wondering to hear more about that.
Felicia.
A couple years ago, I asked, because Fish would come to town about once a summer, and lots of people from the Fish fan base would come into Federal Donuts to eat fried chicken and donuts, and they were fired up to be in there and excited to enjoy the treats, and we noticed. And I asked Matt if one year when Fish came, if he would make a donut as like an homage and like as a treat for the Fish fans, because the drummer has like a stupid dress that he wears that has like a donut print on it. It's preposterous. And so we made a donut in that kind of colorway, and we sent them to the band at the Man and brought them backstage as like a thank you, you know, because we appreciate them so much, some of us more than others. And we did that again in the year after. We did a different donut and sent them backstage and sent Dizengoff hummus. That was by request of the band. They didn't ask for the Federal Donuts. They asked for Dizengoff hummus. And so we sent it again. And then a couple months ago, the band issued like a announcement for their tour with like a film, and donuts were just rolling through New York City to land at Madison Square Garden. And the theme of the show was 13 nights, believe it or not, at Madison Square Garden, all in a row. And so they were themed the Baker's Dozen with donuts. And I got a phone call from one of my friends who manages My Morning Jacket, the band, and he said, "You're gonna get a phone call from Fish's manager, and I need you to be cool."
Listen, wait. Lost in all this is, she's underselling her devotion and love of Fish. I mean, it is like otherworldly. So for her to be getting this phone call at this point is like, I can't even compare it to anything.
Yeah, I was not cool.
I was trying to think about like what it would be like, and I don't know that I love anything like in the way that you love Fish. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. There's other stuff I love more, but I can't talk about it here. Yeah, so the band gave us a call, and we got with their manager, and they were like, "We want a different donut for every night. We're going to give it away to the fans at the door. We want you guys to make it. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Can we do it?" And everyone said, "Hell yeah."
We said hell yeah, and then we locked Matt in the basement. And then we would bring bread and water into the van of the truck and tell him there was more in Manhattan. And that's how we got him to do it every morning. How many did you make a day? 2,000.
So yeah, so Matt made those 2,000 every day, and then we delivered them to Madison Square Garden for every show.
You
and
made
that
them
was
here,
really
and then
amazing. It was
Yeah.
the feedback and just the response we got back was pretty incredible.
Yeah, what about the guy that preserved it?
Yeah, we actually have had several people who had their commemorative donuts from the Fishes encased in resin.
It's like legal now, right? They're
for sale on eBay.
Never mind, resin.
They're for
resin,
sale
right.
on eBay. $500.
You all can have resin encased Federal Donuts.
So you mentioned early in the conversation that donuts were sort of a classic item that you knew wouldn't go out of style. You also mentioned Krispy Kreme, but it almost went under. So did that scare you at all? I mean, Krispy Kreme had really bad financial times, I think. Isn't that right?
We were pretty accustomed to bad financial times. wasn't so different than what we were going through.
I mean, I think their circumstances were a little bit different, but you know, I think there's over 10,000 Dunkin' Donut locations worldwide now. So we felt like we were confident in our ability to run the business into the ground, but we knew that if we didn't, that like the sort of base appeal of donuts would always be there.
Our fried chicken is much better than Dunkin' Donuts fried chicken, and Krispy Kremes.
Citron and Rose was fantastic. Why haven't you brought back kosher meat?
I've wanted to do kosher since we left Citron and Rose, but Steve doesn't want to.
Kosher restaurants are just way too lucrative.
Honest, if nothing else, Steve.
I don't think you talked about whose idea the book was. I know book writing is fairly difficult, whether it's some disagreement as to whether or not it was a good idea.
Well, it was a terrible idea. And that we owe that to Dorothy Kalins, who's here in the audience tonight. Dorothy produced this cookbook, did an incredible job of bringing it together. It's a pretty unusual book. She also produced the Zahav cookbook, which I think won an award or two.
Well, it's not a conventional cookbook. I mean, when you all buy it in just a few moments, you'll see that I would never. I mean, it's a very unconventional book and a unique book too. I think the voice it's in is, you know, conversational and amazing and truthful and hilarious. And then there's delicious recipes. But I actually was sort of curious about the process because, you know, you were also in agreement about everything. That what was the writing of this book like?
Well, Dorothy, I think, had a brilliant idea, which we were like, we all loved the idea of the book, and then when it came time to actually write it, we were like, what the hell is going to be in this book? And Dorothy had the great idea. She sat us down with a tape recorder, and the five of us just talked. And we remembered, I mean, people said things that, you know, that had happened 4 or 5 years ago around the opening that like I had forgotten, you know, these crazy details about the story. And that actually is the structure of the first chapter, is that sort of an edited, condensed version of that conversation, and it tells the story. So I don't know, if for nothing else, it was sort of therapeutic for us to kind of relive those early days.
I'd like to know what your expansion plans are, and if you're franchising, what are you valuing them at?
How much do you have on you right now?
Let me check.
Well, currently we have 2 other cities. One other city we operate in Miami, and we also have Nashville, where we have a lease sign. But we have no plans to franchise. We do have plans to continue growth in those existing cities. And there may be other opportunities here in Philadelphia that may arise. We'll see.
But the New York pop-up was so successful.
It was. And it was a blast, and it was a lot of fun, but that was much easier for us to pull off in a one-off capacity. We love New York, and we didn't have to pay rent for that pop-up, so that was really nice. So if you can find like a permanent pop-up in Manhattan, we'd love that. Everybody's like, why don't you go to New York? Why don't you go to New York? I'm like, have you ever tried to look in for, you know, it's not. But we do love New York, and we are looking there as well.
But I'll tell you what, it is very cool to live on the block and watch all the New York tags pull up on Saturday and Sunday morning. That's a lot of fun.
We still need donuts, you know. We still need good donuts.
I'm a personal friend of the Drexel professor that founded Eat Cafe in West Philly, which is a similar concept to your Rooster Cafe. And I think we probably could use some advice and some collaboration with you folks, and just kind of see if we can make this grow. Her vision is to, in the future, have this be a national with outlets everywhere, like in all 50 states. Any comments or thoughts or any suggestions for collaborating?
I don't think you should be asking us for advice.
I mean, we also know a bunch of folks at Drexel, which is a great program, and I think, you know, I don't have any ideas off the top of my head, but we would love to sit down and talk about collaboration. I think Philadelphia is, unlike other restaurant scenes, I think Philadelphia is known for not being as cutthroat and being pretty collaborative. So we're always love to talk to other people who do what we do and figure out how to do it better.
It's an incredible model. I hope you can attain your goal. Every urban center in America should have something like it.
What was the shop before it became Federal Donuts? What did it sell?
It was a pizza parlor called Messy Jessie's.
And thank God it isn't anymore. You can all come upstairs. There's going to be a book signing right after this. Thank you all so much. Eat donuts.